everybody. It's Jen Suzuki, and I'm in the industry. I meet some of the greatest leaders out there, dealer execs, dealers, GMs, and I'm bringing them in the studio to talk to me about what's making their business pop, what's accelerating their growth. I'm sharing my own personal strategies for your sales team, so I'm ready to get after it. Are you? Welcome back, everybody, to Dealer Talk with Jen Suzuki. I'm very excited to share a guest with you, Chris Sutton. He's the Vice President Retail of Automotive with J.D. Power and Associates. And J.D. Power is something that we always see in the dealerships. They are a market research company. They specialize in consumer insights, advisory services. They're really a data analytics company. And in a lot of industries, of course, automotive, but also financial services and healthcare, telecommunications, a bunch more. But you might know J.D. Power because they're really well known for their customer satisfaction research and the ratings, and they provide businesses with valuable information to improve their products and services. And their studies, their awards, they're highly regarded in our business, and often they're used by dealerships to benchmark their performance against competitors. And overall, J.D. Power just plays a significant role in helping us all understand customer expectations and their preferences to drive improvements to what we bring to the table. And this is precisely what I want to get into with our guest, Chris, today. Welcome, Chris.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. Appreciate you having me on today.
Yeah, well, you guys do a lot of great stuff for our industry, and we always see your names out there. And today, I'd love for you to share some of your data, some of your analytics, some of the things that can help our dealership teams level up. You're probably seeing a lot of trends in the business right now. What are you seeing that's changing in the business? What sort of trends are emerging?
Yeah, I think the last couple of years have been really, really interesting. You know, we'll start maybe on the sales side for a little bit.
All right.
You know, and I think what we saw was, of course, over the last couple of years, is industry was really, really constrained. We saw, higher pricing, a lot of customers paying more than MSRP, right?
Big car payments.
Right, right. And so what's interesting is that even in that environment, when we released our sales satisfaction index study last November, right, that was really kind of at the where we captured information from March through May. Customers were still paying over MSRP, probably about 20% of the time. That customers were, even in that environment, were reporting an improved experience, which for us, I thought was really, really encouraging. It's like in an environment that was not easy for the consumer, that they were still reporting a good experience. So I think that was, for us, really encouraging. And then on the service side, kind of a similar situation where it's been a tough environment from the standpoint of parts availability. Customers are waiting a long time to get a service appointment, over 5 days on average. Certainly the vehicle availability that affected loaner availability. And again, even in that environment, we did see some incremental improvements on the service side too. So I thought, from an overall industry perspective, there's certainly challenges on the customer experience side, but the fact that both purchase and service were improving was really encouraging.
Well, I'm happy to hear that because, I think a lot of times we're under pressure and it's an ever-changing landscape. But I feel like especially the service departments have been heavily under pressure with lack of technicians, lack of staff, and, just people hanging on to their cars a lot longer. And these departments have just been bursting at the seams. Meanwhile, we've got the manufacturers adding heat to get them equipped for EVs and everything else, facility updates and things like this. And then of course there's just loads and loads of technology now. So our staff has to become more aware, more trained, more versed on, how to correct these cars, even sell these cars.
Right.
And when you're under pressure, it's hard to make everybody happy.
Well, what's interesting is that you talked about all these inputs, technology, and how that can be such an enabler for both the retailers and consumers. But to me, it's easy, and it's almost every year I have to kind of remind myself is that the part that the customers like best about the experience. I mean, there's certainly frustrations, but the part that they like best, doesn't matter what sales or service, is they like interacting with their sales consultant. and typically they like interacting with their service advisor. So it's really, I think, easy for us to talk about technology, efficiency, and all those enablers. But a lot of times, it just comes back to the people and the role of personnel can have in delivering a great experience, and I think we lose sight of it. I know on my side, it's like, it's easy for us to do that, but like that is for most customers, that is the best part of the experience, is the personnel interactions.
I am really interested in that data point because I preach this all the time. The prices went up. Everything, the price went up. And I constantly am training in my classes with sales and service teams. You already know the price went up. So when you talk to people, try to make a human connection. AI ain't got nothing on you. I mean, remember things about people, appreciate their loyalty, look them in the eye, notice something about them, say something that's way off business for a moment.
Right. Because that is, every retailer is looking to build loyalty, right? It's like, it's transaction focused for sure, but at the end of the day, the loyalty is the easiest way to retain our customers, cheapest way.
Yes.
And it is that connection with people that really enables that. And, to kind of bring in some of the technology discussion a little bit, on the service side, one of the things we saw is this really strong relationship all the way around, from the standpoint of the use of video-based inspections and video MPI, right? So,
huge fan.
I think there's a lot of data points on our end that show that the customer is a lot more likely to accept work in that case, typically like 10 to 15 percentage points higher, depending on the brand. But that also, again, it helps enable that connection with the people. It's not only about the transaction, but it's about the trust in our team, right?
Yes. The trust, the transparency, it's all right there. And a lot of times they don't really get a chance to see their car up on a lift. And you don't have the advisor who's trying to sell them the work, sharing what they're seeing and showcasing benchmarks, using tools to grade it and really give you facts. I'm actually surprised to hear you say only 10 to 15% higher, because in the stores that I work at, where we've got this as part of a process, it's significantly higher. Not only that, and I don't know if you see something, but as far as the work that they do, not only do they approve the work, but they're more inclined to do more of the
work. Right.
Yeah.
Same. Our data supports that as well. What's interesting to me is, we measure, to your intro, we've been kind of benchmarking the industry for, 30 years. And a lot of these technology parts of the industry, as much as we talk about them, they kind of move incrementally, right? They move like a couple percentage points a year at most. And this issue of video has been the one, especially on the premium brand side, that has just exploded. Over the last 2 years, the usage of it increased from, I think, 17% to 33%. So it's rare for something to double.
Wow, that's real high. Okay, I love that. Right. That's making sense to me.
Right. So it's it's again one that, look, if it makes sense for the retailers, it's creating incremental business and the customers like it. Things like that are more likely to have explosive growth attached to it. So
thank you for sharing this information. I can't wait to hear what more you've got up your sleeve, because I think the whole idea here is to bring awareness to what people enjoy, what they're saying. Hey, this is something that brings me back to the store. This is something that I like about the brand, the people, the process. And we have to be constantly aware and dialed into that, so we can make modifications to improve our businesses and our reach. Because again, as you mentioned, we're fighting for loyalty over here. So you mentioned, some of the video and making personal connections with both service and sales. Is there anything else that stands out to you that really is something we should be aware of?
Yeah, it's interesting, because I feel like the discussions around digital retail, digital tools is I would say it's died down, but maybe moderated a little bit from a few years ago, right?
Definitely.
And what we're seeing is, I think a couple things is that it's not that everybody wants to buy a car online. In fact, I think not that many people do, but you know, up to 30 to 40% of customers, they want to be able to do something online, right? And the idea is if I can do 3 or 4 things and maybe save an hour at the dealership, then that gives me a little bit more time to really engage with the staff and vice versa. And that's really what customers want to do. And our data shows over and over again that the customers that do that, again, they don't have to go through the entire process online, but those that do typically 2 or 3 of the more transactional type of the elements, that they always report a better experience. And the other component for us that I think is, you know, I know we'll get into this a little bit more, is around the EV customers.
Okay.
Are, you know, they're much more likely to want to shop online and do things digitally. Even if we take Tesla out of the equation completely, right? That type of customer, they're going to be, if that typical ICE customer, a third of them are going to want to at least look at pricing online, maybe look at F&I products online. For the EV customer, it's going to be closer to 50%. So it's dramatically different. So, I mean, I think it's something that, you know, it's not that every customer wants to do it, but a good percentage of them expect that in their experience. And I think retailers have to honor that, or you run the potential of missing out on a pretty big group of customers. So.
Excellent points. I want to marinate on that thought for a little bit here. But first, so when you mentioned digital retail tools, and I agree with you, it literally dropped off in the last couple of years. It peaked, you know, during COVID for obvious reasons, and I feel like people were paying less and less attention to it. But maybe it's too soon to tell based on your more recent research. But have you noticed that it has improved any?
Yeah, you know, it's a great question, because we're talking about it in an environment where we went from pretty normal amount of inventory to all of a sudden there's no inventory, pricing
Now we got a lot of inventory.
and I got to be mindful about how much I'm pricing to people in my market, to somebody who's dramatically outside of my market, who I'm never going to see for service. And I think then we're trying to analyze digital retail in that context, which is really tough. You know, so I think this year will be really interesting, right? Our sales satisfaction index study, we're in the process of starting to measure that now, March through May. And this I think is it'll be a good environment, because we got normalized inventory or normalizing, and we'll then be able to compare that. But when we compare, let's say, last year to the year before, it was pretty, you know, honestly, it was pretty flat, Jen. There was some differences in different brands, and
I could see that.
but, you know, across the industry, it was fairly flat. You know, I would say the rate of customers doing things like contracting online, or at least part of contracting, that did increase a little bit. Customers a little bit more likely to be looking at F&I products online. Again, not that they're, you know, agreeing to them, but more of reviewing and researching those. That increased a little bit, but nothing that you'd look at and say, wow, this is really spiking one way or the other. It wasn't. It was really, really flat. So.
Okay. Yeah. So that's interesting too, because as mentioned, and I just want to point this out because, you know, you want to open every door. Yeah. For me, I contracted last year. You know, for me, I had a remote experience. I bought my car out of state. So everything was a remote deal. And I had to have that in order for me to purchase that car. And if the door wasn't there, I certainly wouldn't have bought from that dealership. And a lot of times I'm saying to salespeople, in order to gain commitment from your customer, when you set appointments to show them products, you should have them initiate the deal online. It's not only like a soft closing, but it's helpful for the customer to see that you're a transparent store. It enables them to show up on time. You know, it gives them an opportunity to streamline their experience too, and save time by loading certain things ahead of time, like a driver's license and insurance, VIN, trade information, you know, miles and stuff like this. That's easy to get started, but allows them to take a drive very quickly. And if they wanted to go further, and especially for people that are calling in the stores today, these are low-hanging fruit. These are in-market buyers, in my opinion. You probably know stats and facts on that one better than me, but I do hear a lot, see a lot. And I feel like, you know, a lot of times they want a price now, because a lot of dealers have cars, they have the same similar cars, and people are shopping the competition now. So I'm curious to see how that unfolds in your latest research as well, because now when you are shopping, and they're all priced in the ballpark, we're not off in left field, but if you can offer them a tool at this point, now we need to bring that back into the mix as more of an emphasis of, look, I can streamline your visit. I can save you time. They got the car with the same price. We got the car with the same price, but look, well, here's what I can do.
I mean, yeah, to your point, because that is customers' biggest frustration. When we talk about what customers we talked about what customers liked about the experience. What they don't like is just waiting around, because their time is precious. And again, if they can carve out, or the perception is they save themselves an extra 30 or 40 minutes, I mean, that is a huge win for customers. And what I think one of the things that to me has been, I guess, if there's a disappointment over the last couple of years, it's been that the customers who indicated that they did, let's say, 3 or 4 things online, that they really didn't save any time, that they got to the store and they still were waiting around. And my guess is, look, there's stores I think that are probably doing an awesome job helping the customer save time. But I think everybody really needs to kind of look at it and see, like, look, are we really able to save the customer time when they're able to go and do this? Because if they come in and then just wait another 45 minutes to get an F&I, it's like it's going to be
survey.
Yeah, it's going to be a little bit problematic. So so that part's a little bit disappointing. But what's interesting is that even in that, despite the fact that the customers really weren't saving that much time, they were still saying they had a better experience.
Yes,
which I think is great. It also shows the potential is just massive.
Yeah, it's like anything. Customers only know what they know. So we have to be presenting them their buying options continuously. And really making that staple in sales process, in my opinion. But look, like you said, who doesn't want to save time? I can tell you that's one thing we all have in common, especially with all the technology that we have today, and the companies that are getting it right. Amazon, I mean, we expect that when Amazon doesn't deliver same day, I'm like, get rid of their stock. There's something wrong. They're going downhill.
It's an amazing point, because that then feeds what customers expect in everything else.
Agreed.
When it's like, well, we're waiting for a part, it's going to take 2 weeks. It's the customer's like, what? I bought something on Amazon. I got glue for my kids and it came here in 2 hours.
Exactly. Yes, the expectations are high.
Right. And I think customers they had some patience during COVID, right? I think they understood, a lot of the inventory and parts challenges and supply chain, but then my sense is that probably some frustration set in. So again, even in that environment, the fact that the experience is improving, I thought is a good thing. So,
well, good. I am glad to hear that. And then that's interesting too, because, now we used to struggle prior to all of this technology with a fast delivery. And I feel like a lot of times the delivery impacts the survey and everything else. And it's really hard after you've been buying a car for 3 hours to keep them another hour and a half. Like literally nobody wants to do that. But then you don't know anything about your car and it's part of the survey and it's a whole thing. So like Subaru will do a second delivery. Manufacturers are starting to do more things like this, but it's really hard to teach customers all the features of their new car, and I think that has to impact our sales process. Any information regarding this that you've seen that could help our listeners today with their sales process and in addressing that?
It's a great question, because it touches a lot of different things. I mean, to your point, I just don't think it's possible for most models that at the end of the experience, the customer is going to stay at the dealership for an extra hour and a half and learn about the features and controls. There's not, especially younger customer, they're not going to want to do that. So I think it really reinforces, and this then opens up a whole another discussion around just the importance of following up with a customer within, let's say, a week and a half, and, taking them through some of the additional features on the vehicle, giving them some tips and tricks. Because then you get to a certain point, like if it's after a month and the customer probably doesn't, then they've kind of moved on, they are kind of where they are with it. But if it's within that time, and I mean, to your point, I think it's great that Subaru kind of brings customers back to the dealership, but it doesn't have to be that. What we've seen is that, do customers like when they come back to the dealership, learn more about the features and controls? They do. They give that an amazing rating. But they don't give it necessarily any better rating than if the sales consultant calls them and spends 15 minutes with them over the phone.
Ooh.
Right? Don't have to bring the customer back. And that, there's a lot of areas where you know, there's not that much generational difference, but that is one that is, you know, typically the older customer is going to be one that's more likely to go back to the dealership. The younger customer is not really going to want to do that. It's like, if you can do it on the phone or even like quick Zoom call, take them through a couple features and controls. It makes a huge difference. It makes a huge difference. And I would say, unfortunately, again, there's big brand differences in this, but in general, it only happens about 20 to 30% of the time.
I'm surprised to hear it's that high.
Yeah.
So for our listeners, a lot of times we're trained legacy thinking to follow up after the sale for referrals, you know, and I'm always like, take. We're in a different world now. You know, it's what we can give people that's a value, that's going to be memorable, long lasting, that's going to embrace loyalty. You know, so I oftentimes would suggest that they send links to the features that people use the most, that maybe they didn't have the time to go around. And the manufacturers have great YouTube channels. They've got great videos, you know, but instead of like referrals, call, you know, hey, can I send you some links, or can I answer any questions, or would you like to get on a FaceTime? This is more modern selling strategy, in my opinion.
Great point. I mean, because we've seen the same thing with the online tutorials. Just the feedback from customers on those is equally good, right? And you'll see some retailers, it's like they will try and create some of their own content on this. It's like, why? The manufacturer has all the resources in the world to do this stuff, right? They are super motivated to do that. But yeah.
Well, you guys do a lot of like surveys on quality and reliability. And if there's one thing that I've noticed an influx of, it's in our service BDC, because they're doing a lot of recall calls. They're doing a lot of special order parts calls. And, you know, we have a ton of technology in these cars. What are you seeing out there that we could just be aware of when it comes to this, and how it might impact how we operate internally?
Yeah, it's a good question. And that, you know, I think for the most part, most of the manufacturers are pretty good about manufacturing type defects, right? It's like, you know, as an industry, not exclusively, but most of that stuff has been solved. So, you know, now if a customer has an issue, it's more likely to be their software related, things like voice recognition, Apple CarPlay type of issues. And then you fold in not only, you know, an issue with a redesign, but we're talking about EVs, all new vehicles that are going to be much more likely to have recalls associated with them. You know, just a lot of just by the function of being new. And then I think that's what's more likely to cause issues of customers coming back. And like the voice recognition and Apple CarPlay in particular, you know, those we talked about delivery and follow up. You know, I would be very mindful about, again, giving customers a couple little tips and tricks around their particular model, how to use voice recognition, whether it's pausing or kind of how you introduce it or launch it. It's like those type of things are customer frustrations. They will outnumber the manufacturing type traditional defects by a lot.
And it probably ties back even to what you mentioned earlier, is that people really like the connection with their service advisor, and they feel they like that relationship with their salesperson. And a lot of times when we have strong relationships and connections with people, when these incidents do arise, and at this time I would say expect it, because there is loads of technology. I say this to customers. There's so much technology on these cars. They're still navigating it. But we want to be sure that you get that software update and it's timely, and, you know, your car's operating at optimum level for you. But sometimes it's just bringing awareness, just simple statements like this. But if they already feel confident about you and they like your team and they like the way that they've been handled along the way, it doesn't make it. It's not like, oh, my car's crap, you know. Now I'm brand bashing.
Because it's not like that. It's typically, you know, very specific to interactions on technology where, or it might be under certain conditions. So, you know, I think for that reason, it's a great opportunity for the retailers to be a resource to the customers. I mean, one of the areas that, like we started talking about this a little bit, is this issue of kind of almost like a survey and or ratings and review culture. And you could blame JD Power for that a little bit, maybe, but
probably live in.
Right. So I think there is an amazing recognition that, like, once I'm in the window of, I've bought my vehicle, someone follows up with me. Look, it's great to ask for me to post a rating and review. It's fine to let the customer know we're going to send the survey and we appreciate their feedback. But we also have to understand, like, look, is there anything hanging out with the customer that we can help them with? Because I really worry right now, we just go right to the review, right to finding out about the survey. And then what happens when that window's over, right? It's like, either I've given a survey, I posted the review, and now all of a sudden I need help with something. It's like that customer's ownership experience is not this 2-week block after I buy the car and then I service the car. It is, for 5 years. And it's like our responsiveness to that customer is, more than just that window of surveys. And again, you can blame JD Power for a little bit of that, but I think it's important that customers don't make decisions about the retailer and vehicle within those slots only. It's across their ownership experience.
And I think for everybody in the dealership, it's one customer, a lot of touch points, and keeping people all on the same page and how we treat customers and how we support them so that, they're getting their questions answered along the way. I can tell you, I bought my car, I don't know, 8 months ago. I bought it remotely, was delivered. I still don't know how to use my car. They've never called me, but that's okay. I understand. That's the price you pay for doing a deal like that. But I would actually, I'm servicing my car at the same place I've serviced my car for 10 years, and I would like it if somebody reached out and there was a brand ambassador that could keep the relationship intact, because a lot of times that's our biggest challenge is we always want something from customers when we reach out to them. But if we had something in place, and some brands do it better than others, where we're very focused on maintaining that connection, I think those kind of things pay off. But
it's a great point, because I do think it's totally okay to ask. It's great to request, but I think there's some give and take with that, and there's a mutual benefit. So
yeah, well, there's a lot to these cars now, and there's a lot going on in our industry too. I work at the NADA Academy, and I work a lot with NADA staff, and I'm very privy to the things that they do for dealers and how they, their presence on Capitol Hill and the challenges that we face as an industry out there. What would you say are some of the big challenges that are facing automotive, and maybe how dealerships are adapting to some of the challenges out there? Any strategies that are proving successful? Any insights on that?
Yeah, it's that one is interesting, because obviously the narrative around EVs is changing a little bit and continues to change, right? Including plugins. And part of it is that the feedback we're getting from, again, studying both purchase and after sales experience, is that the feedback from EV customers just has not been great.
Okay.
And for as much as we've talked about the connection with personnel is usually the strength of the experience, on the EV side, it hasn't been. The EV customer perception of salesperson expertise, which is usually very good for ICE vehicles. It's close to 900 on a 1 to 1,000 scale. For the EV customers, it's below 800, which really isn't very good. So I think it's a combination of product training, but also this issue of kind of really being able to connect with people in a way that the EV customer is a little bit different, at least for kind of version 1.0, 1.5. Those customers have done a lot of research. Their knowledge is pretty good. And now we're getting into, if we really want to increase the adoption here, we're going to have to be educating customers, because that next round of customers, they probably haven't done as much. They haven't done as much research. You're probably going to be a little bit more skeptical. And even if the manufacturers were, let's say they moderate EV launches and build, it's not like they're eliminating them, right? It's like, and the growth is still continuing. It's just not going at as fast as a pace. I think that is a little bit of a misnomer. It's like, oh, it's slowing down. It's like the growth rate is slowed down, not the growth. It's still growing. It's just growing at a slower rate. So.
I mean, and let's face it, it's not like the Tesla Y wasn't a great selling car.
The best selling car last year, amazingly. Yeah,
the best-selling car. Okay. Yeah, so I mean, that is telling that there is a market for it. So for our listeners, I just want to pinpoint something that he said and translate it really here to how we can do better with the data that's out there. You know, and people have been bashing EV like crazy lately. I get it. I'm not an EV lover. Why are we spending time on hydro? But anyway, the thing is, or hybrids. You know, I mean, I just love the hydrogen concept. It makes more sense to me. But who cares about what I think? The thing is our sales teams have also curbed it. They're like, oh, we're not selling any of those. I don't need to know anything about that. But I say, look, you're not going to sell them if you don't school up on them. You should be at least aware of the history of the emerging technologies and the changes. And look, you've got new entrants coming to market. If you're not knowledgeable, how will you compete? You know, you don't think it's a big deal now, but it is. You got to stay savvy, stay knowledgeable, right?
What surprised me in our sales data that we collect against 35,000 customers is my expectation was that the Tesla customers, that they really weren't cross-shopping any other brand, right? That they were completely loyal to Tesla. They were solely focused on that. And what we found is that only 28% of the Tesla customers only considered Tesla. 72% of them considered the traditional, right?
Really?
And that consideration then funneled down into a huge percentage of them were still going into traditional retailers, test driving their EV offerings. But the transition from driving the vehicle to talking about price, it just kind of fell off a cliff. You know, there's a usual progression there. And it just ended. So, you know, it shows us like that, look, it's not like we didn't get a swing at the bat here, you know, but so it shows that, like, look, the idea that we're not getting any traffic, it's like that, at least for that time, that wasn't the case. So.
Really great insights there. I could unpack that for days because, I mean, you stay knowledgeable, know your competitors, but also have that digital retailing tool accessible for these buyers. Serve it up, show it to them on the showroom. Don't let them leave without a link to that car,
right?
So they can work that car deal themselves if they want to streamline the experience. Because if that's where it fell off, that's the correction. Oh, all we could do is try. We don't know it doesn't work until we try and find out it doesn't, or it does.
Right. And I think, you know, you were talking about delivery. I think there's some signals that then kind of come back into shopping a little bit too, where, you know, I don't know how you buy an EV without somebody helping you download the brand app, showing you how to use it. Right. And I would say for the most part, like dealers do it, they are doing they're doing a good job with that. But there's a quarter of the customers said, I didn't review the brand app when I bought the car, which I don't even know how that's possible, you know, because you're not checking charging or anything at that point. You know, I would think that would cut your ownership experience in half by not having access to something like that. So that's one that is just like, it's just one of those absolute must of helping the customer with it. I think the other challenge with EV is, again, it's not only the vehicle, it's, you know, how do I get a charger installed? Where are the other charging locations? I'm going to need more than just my own brand app. I'm going to need some charging apps. It's kind of taking through the customer through that and letting them know it's like, look, it's different, but it's not overly daunting, because on the other side of it is the charging experience is dramatically easier. If you know, it's like if you're fortunate, if you have a home charging access, it's much easier than, you know, going to the gas station once a week. So
having to find your spot.
right.
Lastly, you know, global market trends, things that you might be seeing in other markets and consumer preferences, or anything out there that's even regulatory environments, adoption of new technology, anything that comes to mind here. Curious about strategies.
I think there's a lot of interest in eyes on how the Chinese brands move into other markets, you know, including brands like BYD. And, you know, I think specifically as soon it's, you know, how they perform in Europe, how they perform in Mexico, where they're already, you know, in the market starting to gain not a huge amount of share, but gaining share. And so I think there's a lot of industry interest in how those brands do in those specific markets. And, ultimately what that means in the US, whether, the impact of tariffs or not. But I think that is one of the, predominant themes is how those brands come into other markets and how they do. So,
yeah. So keeping our eye on how
sure.
these newer brands are working out in both Mexico and Europe.
Right. Yeah. Which for sure have a EV component to them, but also just in general, how they do. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Well, you gave us a lot here today, more than I expected. And thank you so much, Chris, for your time and your insights, and the data and the analytics play here was really, I think it's so important for our auto industry friends to pay attention to. And we're constantly trying to evolve. And a lot of times I say to people, you're not trying to go back pre-COVID. You're reinventing. And everything continues to move forward, but we can't look back. We have to, be mindful of how things are playing out or how consumers' preferences and behaviors and their expectations are. We're trying to meet the mark.
Right. And for the retailers too, leveraging, accessing, and getting comfortable with their own data, using that, is tremendous opportunity, right? They have just an amazing amount of data that they have access to from their own customers, which is fantastic. So
true. That next episode.
Yeah.
I love talking to you. You're so easygoing. You're so easy to talk to. Thank you so much, Chris, for your time.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. It was great. Yeah, thanks for having me on today. So.
All right, take care.
All right. Yeah, bye-bye.
If you like these episodes and my sales game techniques, you should snatch up our latest dealer education program I'm hosting. It's called Jen's Remote Classes, and it's a 1-hour, once-a-week class with me alongside other dealerships, all pursuing the same end game to achieve top 10% status in your dealership. For more info, hit me up. All my contact info's in the show notes. I want to hear from you. And follow Dealer Talk with Jen Suzuki right now to get notified when episodes like this one drop. This is Jen on the podcast Dealer Talk with Jen Suzuki. See ya!